The member for Riverina.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy Speaker, and may I commend the member for O'Connor for his speech and for his contribution to this place. And last Saturday at the Nationals pre-selection, another very worthy candidate for the seat of O'Connor was pre-selected for the Nationals. His name is Chubb Witham, and I look forward to him making a very worthwhile contribution to this place, as Tony Crook has done for the constituents of O'Connor, who have benefited greatly from having a Nationals person, a West Australian Nationals member representing their interests. Just recently, in fact it was April 29, the Prime Minister made a speech to the per capita reform agenda prior to the budget and used a rather bizarre example, I thought, of where she was trying to explain what the budget cuts which were approaching would mean to the average Australian person. And she drew on the example of John. Imagine a wage earner, John, employed in the same job throughout the last 20 years. We all know the speech, we all heard it, we all raised our eyebrows at it. And certainly John has had to tighten his belt in the example that the Prime Minister used. But I'd like to imagine an irrigator by the name of John. I might use the example of John Bassetto, who was the one who told the Water Minister he was a disgrace when he went to Griffith about the so-called water reform he was planning to implement. And certainly the irrigator John, in my example, and it might be John Bassetto, it might be any other one of those great family farmers at Griffith and in the Murrumbidgee irrigation area, whose name might just happen to be John, but certainly their uncertainty has not been lifted by the water reform, by the Murray-Darling Basin Plan enacted by this government. And certainly I look forward to an Abbott Truss-led government which will keep its word and cap buyback at 1,500 gigalitres, which means that only 249 gigalitres of water will then need to remain to be recovered. And that will be a good outcome for the irrigators of my area, and certainly a good outcome for all those irrigators by the name of John. But also imagine a stay-at-home mum. Let's call her Jane. Now, Jane is concerned that there is nothing for her. She's a stay-at-home mum and she's choosing to look after her kids. But what is there on the table for poor Jane? Indeed, we have a regional student. Let's just, for example, call her Jenny. And Jenny's also affected because, as Senator Fiona Nash, the Nationals regional education spokeswoman, told Senate estimates yesterday that just 17% of regional 25 to 34-year-olds had bachelor or postgraduate qualifications in 2011, compared with 36% of those from the city. Residents of regional Australia, Senator Nash said, are only half as likely to have degrees as their metropolitan counterparts, and that's really tough on them. It's really tough on the Jennies of the world, on the Jennies who are trying to make a great contribution to this country, but because of Julia and her government, they have not been able to do that. And
Order.
Okay, for the Prime Minister,
Order. The member for Moreton, my apologies.
Deputy Speaker, I'd ask the member to refer to the elected Prime Minister of this country by her correct title and not be so insulting.
The member for Moreton will refer to members by their correct titles.
Sure, I take his interjection. The Prime Minister of this country and her government have overseen a situation where regional students were not provided with independent youth allowance. And that was just a shameful indictment on this government, a shameful indictment on a government and certainly on a Prime Minister who, when she was the Minister for Education, said that she was all about equity. And the member for Moreton knows that that just certainly wasn't the case. Certainly wasn't the case for those regional students whose name might have been Jenny, whose name might have been Julia, whose name might have been John, Jane or anything else. It certainly wasn't fair. I'll take your interjections, but you know it wasn't fair, and it's certainly that they have a tough enough time, member for Moreton, they have a tough enough time to actually get a tertiary education without being held back by your government. without being held back by you. Well, I don't have to give you the detail because it was already the fact that you wouldn't provide, that your government would not provide equity in independent youth allowance, and you know it, and the members on your side know it. And I certainly saw the Minister for Education, Peter Garrett, and there are, I've called him by his full name, but the Minister for Education came in and made this speech about we're going to provide independent youth allowance equity just because the regional independents and the regional members of my government, you were probably one of them, have told me that this is so, and that came after months and months and months of the national standing up for our people who were not given tertiary independent youth allowance, and it was so unfair. You know it, your members on your side knew it, and you can complain and you can whinge all you like, but that is the truth.
The member will be heard without interjection.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This year's budget has confirmed what we have all known for a long, long time. Labor's financial and budget management is in complete chaos. Complete chaos. The budget has done nothing to help Australian families deal with rising costs of living pressures, economic uncertainty and poor services. Instead, it has delivered more debt, more deficits, more taxes, more broken promises and certainly more uncertainty from an incompetent government which cannot and has not been able to be trusted since it was elected in 2007. It has been 6 long years of chaos, debt and unfortunately spin. Everything's about spin and rhetoric that just doesn't add up. Just like the budget figures, they never add up, and Australians are sick to the back teeth of it. They're desperate for stable and competent economic fiscal managers. Australians deserve that. It's the least that this parliament can provide. It is, after all, the taxpayers' money that this government is wasting. The taxpayers' money. And he can complain all he likes, but he knows what I'm saying is true. Yet again, the Prime Minister and the Treasurer have failed to set out a credible... You'll get your turn. You've probably already had it. You probably don't want to take it because you're so ashamed of the government you represent. And you're so ashamed of the fact that there has been, yet again, another budget deficit. Yet again, the Prime Minister and the Treasurer have failed to set out a credible economic strategy for the coming 12 months, let alone for the next decade. And that's what we want. We want long-term plans, not just plans brought in indecent haste, not just plans brought in at the dead of a night, made out on a beer coaster. We want good, stable, credible government. This year, the government has delivered a total gross debt to breach the $300 billion debt ceiling within the forward estimates. Another record deficit with at least 2 more to come. That is shameful. I mean, we're maxing out our nation's credit card. We're maxing out our nation's potential savings. We're preventing nation-building infrastructure from being able to be rolled out. Roads, hospitals, those important things that the people certainly in regional areas and certainly in the Riverina need and certainly they expect, but they're not getting it from this mob. How can the government justify $100 million spending on government advertising yet deliver $25 billion more in higher taxes over the next 4 years? It's a good question. We must remember these are taxes which won't hit Australians' pockets until after the next election, and let me tell you, Madam Deputy Speaker, that election can't come soon enough. Families have been let down yet again. They can justify spending to promote their own schemes, this is Labor, coincidentally in an election year, but scrap tax cuts, family payments and all the rest. And families are struggling to make ends meet. They're struggling in Moreton, they're struggling in the Riverina, they're struggling right throughout Australia. But what is this government doing about it? Very, very little. They're just taking out of their back pockets like a thief in the night. Now, reading the reaction to the budget in the Daily Advertiser, my local newspaper in Wagga Wagga, on the 15th of May, the only positive reaction I could find was from, surprise, surprise, the country Labor president. The only positive reaction. Indeed, you might be interested to know. Well, stay tuned on Mr Pickley and his comments about Gonski. Stay tuned.
The member for Moreton will desist from interjecting. He's not assisting, certainly not assisting the chair.
And he's wasting my time.
And the member will withdraw that statement.
Well, I won't withdraw because he's soaking up my time.
The member will withdraw the statement.
Well, for the sake of the House, I withdraw, but he is wasting my time.
The member will
continue. And as far as Mr Pickley is concerned, yes, he did come yesterday, the State Education Minister, and he did speak to the Nationals about the Gonski plan. And all I say is, hold fire on that criticism of me. Hold fire on that criticism of me, because there are some aspects of the Gonski plan I actually agree with, Member for Moreton. There you go, that might surprise you. John Harding, the president of the Wagga branch of the Association of Independent Retirees, feels that they've been left in a state of uncertainty. And he's right. He said, if the rules keep changing, older people are disadvantaged because they aren't earning any more. If super is intended to do what it's supposed to do, you need to be confident that the super, as you know it, will stay the same. Dom and Larissa Byrne of Wagga Wagga are about to welcome baby number 6 in July. And good luck to them, and congratulations to them for that. They're certainly doing their part for the nation. But they believe the government is making it more difficult for young couples to start families. Mr Byrne expressed his concern, saying if the government wants a strong economy, the best way to achieve it is to provide as much support to families as possible. Strong families build a thriving economy. He's a good man, Dominic Byrne, and I agree with him wholeheartedly on that point. Despite claims from the government that it offers hope and assistance for families, the Coalition knows, more importantly, the taxpayers of Australia know, that this is far from reality. At the 2010 election, the Prime Minister promised Australia's net debt would peak at less than $90 billion. This year's budget revealed net debt will now peak at over $191 billion, and this is more than double the Prime Minister's original promise. But the Australian public are used to this Prime Minister not exactly keeping all her promises. She promised that there would be no carbon tax, but there is. She guaranteed there would be a surplus. In fact, she guaranteed there would be a surplus 165 times, but there isn't, and there never will be under the current Labor government. When was the last time the Labor government produced a surplus? 1989. This budget is the 12th deficit from its, wait for it, last 12 budgets. And the last year the Treasurer promised a surplus of $1.5 billion, but instead he's developed a $19.4 billion deficit, a deficit a dozen times or more as big as the surplus he originally promised. Australian households are under pressure. University students of the Riverina are under pressure. The irrigators of the Riverina are under pressure, and they're under pressure because of this government. They're under pressure because this government delivers no certainty, no hope, and certainly I hope that come election day they are sent packing, because that's what they deserve. I'm very concerned, very concerned about this government's treatment of veterans and of the Defence Force more broadly. As members are well aware, my electorate is a tri-service city, Wagga Wagga. It has the Army, the Air Force and the Navy. Stop interjecting. Please stop interjecting and just hear me, because you actually might learn something. Now, part of our defence strategy needs to be that we don't pare back defence. We don't cut it to the bone like your mob has. $5.5 billion was last year stripped out of the defence budget, and there was no certain confidence this year either. Not only that, our veterans with DFRDB and DFRB entitlements are not being indexed as they should, and your government, despite the rhetoric that we've heard from the Veterans Affairs Minister, has not come good on any of its promises to properly and fairly index those people who put their lives on the line. Put their lives on the line for our nation, and what's your side of government, what's your side of politics doing for them? Nothing. Nothing at all. You just make it so hard for them to make ends meet. And you know, the number of correspondence I get from Bert Hobie and others, they're good people. They put their lives on the line for this nation, and what do they get in return? Absolutely nothing. It's shameful, and you know it. Now, the defence budget has been absolutely cut to the bone. It is an absolute disgrace. And as I said before, the tertiary spending is also shameful. $20 million taken away from Charles Sturt University, an absolute leader in tertiary education. Don't raise your eyebrows at me. It is true. $20 million that has been cut back. Charles Sturt University's Vice-Chancellor, Professor Andrew Van, he said that the cuts, and I quote him, are short-sighted, unwise, illogical and undercutting our future prosperity. Now, we should be doing everything we can. We should be doing absolutely everything we can in this place to better prepare our nation for the future, to better prepare our future generations so that they have some prosperity. Your side's doing nothing about it, but we have a plan. We have a very good plan to put this nation back on track.
Remember, we refer to members by their titles.
Well, what did I say?
You're referring to the member for Moreton, member for Riverina.
Well,
you may wish to refer to the member by his title.
We have a plan. It's a good plan. And certainly come September 14, I'm sure that we will pay the debt back. It will take a long time, and we will give this nation hope, reward and opportunity. Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy Speaker.